So this bag is being used as a stash buster. I'm using a ton of scrap yarn, as well as just using a ton of scrap supplies that I have in my craft space. So this is the yarn that I used for this bag. It is a mix of different types of yarn. I have different quantities of each yarn as well. I have some big twist value, I have some loops and thread value, I have some Caron 1 pounds. I believe those are the only 3 brands in this basket that I have been using. Because this project is mostly being used as a stash buster and a way to use up a bunch of my yarn that I have odd quantities for, it really doesn't matter how much of each color you have. We'll be changing colors between each row. So if you have a ton of small quantities of different yarns, this is the perfect project for that. So this bag is really customizable. I'm going to be adding lining and hardware to mine. You don't have to do that though if you don't want to. If you would like to make this bag in its most basic form without any of the extra stuff, all you will need is a couple of colors of weight 4 yarn and a 5mm crochet hook. You are going to need some fabric. I am also using scrap fabric that I had sitting around. I would say you would need probably about 3/4 of a yard, maybe even a half yard of fabric would work for this bag. I used a different fabric to line each square because that's just what I had. So if you want to line the bag, you will need fabric, you will need pins to pin down the fabric to your bag, and of course a needle and thread. If you would like to add hardware, these lobster clasps, I got these from Michaels. Again, this is also totally optional if you don't want to use hardware and you just want to sew your strap directly onto your bag. Totally fine. I'll show you how to do that as well. And then I am using a 5mm crochet hook. To get started, we are going to want to make 3 of these squares. So I am going to be using the same colors of yarn for all 3 of my squares because I do have enough of each color. But if you only have a little bit of each color, you could do each square and each row in a different color. I kind of think the funkier the better for these stash buster projects. So I am going to grab my first color, which is going to be this middle color, and I am using this dark brown. So to get started, I am putting a slip knot on my hook, and now I'm going to chain 5. So now that I've got a chain of 5, I am going to go into that first stitch and slip knot. And this is going to create a little loop that we will be working into. So I made a slip knot and now we've got this loop in the middle. So I'm going to chain 3, yarn over, and double crochet into the loop. So to double crochet, I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook, pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook, pull through 2, pull through 2. So that initial chain 3 counted as our first double crochet of this round, and then we have our second. So I'm going to make another double crochet right into the space in the loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2, pull through 2. So now I've got 4. So I'm going to keep going until I have 16 double crochets, and that does include our initial chain 3. So keep going and I'll meet you back when I have 16. So now I have 16 double crochets. So now we're going to find that chain 3 that we made at the very beginning, and we are going to go into the top stitch or the 3rd stitch so we can count 1, 2, 3, and we're going to go into that top stitch. So insert your hook and we're going to slip stitch. So grab that working yarn, pull it through and pull it through. So I'm going to change color, so I'm going to tie off, and I am going to cut my yarn leaving a bit of a tail so that I can weave it in. And I also like to just pull on that back yarn to kind of pull the hole in the middle a little tighter. So now we're going to grab our next color. So I am going to use this kind of off-white. So make a slip knot. So for this next round, we are going to be doing puff stitches. So I am going to insert my hook into any random stitch. Really doesn't matter where you start. So just going to go into the stitch, and I am going to put that slip knot on my hook. Now I'm going to chain 2. I like to do the first puff stitch of a row a little bit differently than the rest of them, but you don't have to. So I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into that same stitch we just went into, and pull up a loop. So now you've got 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, go right back into that same stitch, pull up a loop, and now you've got 5. So for this first one, I'm going to stop at 5, and we're going to pull through all of the loops on your hook, all 5, and then chain 1. So now for the rest of the puff stitches for this row, we're going to yarn over, go into that next stitch, pull up a loop. So you've got 3, yarn over, pull up a loop, now you've got 5, yarn over, pull up a loop, and now you should have 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've got 7 on our hook, and now we are going to pull through all of the loops on our hook. So this yarn is a little bit splitty, so it's not pulling through super smooth, but you get the idea. You'll pull through all of them, and then you'll chain 1 to secure the stitch, and it'll give us a little bit of looser tension between the puff stitches as well, so they're not so tight. Alright, I'll show you one more puff stitch before we keep going. So yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull up, yarn over, pull up. So once you've yarned over and pulled up a loop 3 times, you should have 7 loops on your hook. Now pull through all 7. And chain 1. So you'll keep on doing that, go all the way around and make a puff stitch in every single stitch. And at the end of this row, you should have 16 puff stitches because we had 16 double crochets. So I'm going to keep making them, and then I'll meet you back when I'm done. So I just made my last puff stitch. I've got 16, so I know that I am on track. And I did chain 1 after this puff stitch, just like I did the rest of them. So I am going to go into the top of that chain 2 and slip stitch to join this round, just like we did the last one. So pull through and pull through, and now I'm changing color again, so I'm going to tie off and again leave a little tail to weave in at the end, and that'll be for all of the rows. This next row, we are going to be making these little clusters. I am going to insert my hook into any space, so we're not going into a stitch. I'm just going to go into that space between the puff stitches. So I am going to make a slip knot, put that slip knot on my hook, and I am going to pull up my loop and chain 2. So we are going to yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop. So now we've got 3 loops on our hook, pull through 2. Now we've got 2. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop. We've got 4 loops on our hook, pull through 2, we've got 3. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, pull through 2, now you've got 4. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, pull through 2, and now you've got 5. So once you have 5 loops on your hook, you're going to pull through all 5 of them and chain 2. And you see it kind of made this almost diamond kind of a pointed shape. So now we're going to move on to the next space. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, pull through 2. You've got 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull through 2. You've got 3. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull through 2. And one more time, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2, and now you've got 5. pull through all 5, and chain 2. So that's how we are going to continue going all the way around, and again at the end of this row you should have 16 of these stitches. So I made it all the way around this round, so I just finished this one, did the chain 2, and now I am going to go into the top of that next stitch and slip stitch to join, and now I will tie off. So I am going to grab my next color, make a slip knot, and now I am going to insert again into any space. So not going into a stitch, just going into a space between the stitches. And I'm putting that slip knot on my hook. So pull up your loop and chain 3. So that is going to be our first double crochet. Yarn over and do 2 more double crochets into that same space. So now we've got this cluster of 3 double crochets or a granny stitch in that space. So now we're going to yarn over and go into the next space and do a cluster of 3 double crochets. And that is how we're going to go around this round. So we are just going to do a cluster of 3 double crochets into every space, and when I get back to the end, I'll meet you back here. Now I'm going to go into the top of that chain 3, the initial chain 3 that we did, and I am going to slip stitch to end this round and tie off. So this is where this pattern will change up a little bit because we are no longer going to be working in a circular shape, but we are going to add corners so that we can make this into a square. So I am going to grab my next color of yarn and make a slip knot. Now I am again going to just insert wherever into a space, not a stitch, and put that slip knot on my hook. So we are going to start on a corner space. So pull up your loop and chain 3. So now we're going to do a treble crochet. So we are going to wrap the yarn around our hook twice. So 1, 2. So you'll yarn over twice, go into that space, pull up a loop, pull through 2, pull through 2, and pull through the final 2. So that is a treble crochet. So then in that next space, we're going to do a cluster of 3 double crochets. So what we did last round. Now we are going to do 3 half double crochets in the next space. So yarn over, insert, pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. Pull through all 3 to make a half double crochet. So again, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And 1 more. So far we've got 2 treble, cluster of 3 double crochets, and a cluster of 3 half double crochets. So now we're going to do another cluster of 3 double crochets. So now we're going to make another corner stitch. So we started off by making only half of a corner stitch. Now we're going to make a full corner stitch here. So in the next space, we're going to make 2 treble crochets. So yarn over twice, insert, pull up the loop, pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through 2. Make another treble crochet in that same space. Now this is how we turn this into a corner. So chain 2, and in this same space make 2 more treble crochets. So we have a corner. Now in the next space, we're going to make a cluster of 3 double crochets. Now in the next space, a cluster of 3 half double crochets. Now another cluster of 3 double crochets. So now the next space is going to be a corner stitch. So 2 treble crochets, chain 2, and 2 more treble crochets. So from here on out, we're going to repeat that same pattern. We're going to do corner stitch, cluster of double crochets, half double crochets, then a corner stitch. So the same way we did here, double crochet, half, double crochet, corner stitch. So keep going around, and then I will meet you when we get back to this first half corner that we started. So I made it all the way around my now square, and I am back to where we started, right here in this half corner that we created. So now all we have to do to finish off the square is just finish off this corner. So 2 treble crochets right into that same space. Now chain 2. And we are going to slip stitch into the top of that initial chain 3 that we made. So go into that 3rd stitch and slip stitch and tie off so we can change color. For this next row, I am going to switch colors again, make a slip knot, and for this row we are going to start in a corner space. So you can go into any corner space. I am just going to go through this one and insert my hook directly into the space. Put the slip knot on your hook, pull up your loop, and chain 3. And that is always going to count as our first double crochet. Yarn over and make another double crochet into that same space. We have a half finished corner here. We've got 2 double crochets. Now we are going to make more of these stitches. So because you do 2 single crochets between each of these stitches, when you join to corners, you'll do 2 single crochets before joining. So we're going to do 2 single crochets before making our first stitch so that everything is even. So now we are going to do these stitches exactly how we did on this row. So yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2, yarn over, pull up, pull through 2, keep going until you've got 5 loops on your hook. I've got 5 on my hook, and now I'm going to pull through all 5 and chain 2. So I'm going to keep going with the stitch, and I will meet you when I get to my next corner space. So now we're going to make a corner stitch. So make 2 double crochets in that corner space. Chain 2. And 2 more double crochets in that same space. So again, because we chained 2 after this stitch before we got to the corner stitch, to make sure everything stays even, we're going to chain 2 before making our next stitch. So after chaining 2, we are just going to go right into that space. And we will keep going. So keep going with your stitches in all of the spaces, and your corner spaces of 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets in the corners. So I just finished this last stitch before the corner we started in, Now I'm going to go right into that corner space, place 2 double crochets, chain 2, and to finish off this round we are going to slip stitch into the top of that initial chain 3. And tie off. For our next round, we are going to start with a slip knot. Put your hook into any corner space and pull up your new color. Chain 3. So yarn over, double crochet into that corner space. And now we are going to do a granny cluster, or a cluster of 3 double crochets in that next space. So we are going to keep going with that. We are going to do a granny stitch in each space all the way across the side of our square. So I just got to a corner space, so I am going to do 2 double crochets directly into that space, chain 2, and 2 more double crochets into that corner space. So now that I have that corner finished, I am going to keep going all the way around my square, doing granny stitches in each space, and then my corner stitches in the corner spaces. So I will keep going and I'll meet you back at the end. So I made it all the way around, and now I am back at that first corner that we started and did half of. So I am going to yarn over and I'm going to do 2 double crochets right into that first corner space that we started in. So now to finish the corner, I'm going to chain 2, go into the top of that chain 3, and slip stitch. And now we will tie off. So for our next color, I'm going to go back to this dark brown, and we are going to be making a solid double crochet row. So to get started, I made a slip knot. I am going to start in a corner, so go right through that corner space, put that slip knot on the hook, pull it up and chain 3 for our first double crochet. So now I'm going to yarn over and go into that next stitch. So we're actually going into the stitch, and I am double crocheting. Yarn over, go into the next stitch, and double crochet. So we are going to be double crocheting in every single stitch all around the border of the square. So we are again going into stitches. We're not going into spaces in this round, so every stitch. So I'm going to keep going, and then I will meet you after I've double crocheted in all of the stitches on this side and I get to this corner. So I just got to my first corner, so I did a double crochet in every stitch all the way across. And if you're unsure of whether or not you are at your corner and you can't tell, you can see that the next stitch is this chain 2, so I am positive that this is my last stitch on this side of my square. So we got to the chain 2, we're in a corner space, so yarn over, go into the space, you don't have to go into the chain 2, and do a double crochet. Now chain 2, because we are making a corner, yarn over and do another double crochet right into that space. So keep going with double crochets in all of the stitches. When you get to a corner, you'll do 1 double crochet, chain 2, 1 double crochet, and keep going. So I am going to finish up this row and then I will meet you back when I'm done. Now I'm back to this corner that we started in. So yarn over, double crochet, chain 2, and slip stitch into the top of that initial chain 3. and tie off so that we can change color. So I've got my next color here. I'm making a slip knot, and I am going to go through a corner space, right into the space, put the knot on my hook, pull up and chain 3. Now I'm going to yarn over and do another double crochet right into that same space. So now we're going to be making some more granny stitches. So yarn over, and we're going to skip 2 stitches and go into the third. So 1, 2, 3. We're going into that third, and we're going to do a granny stitch or a cluster of 3 double crochets right into that stitch. Again, skip 2, 1, 2, go into that next one. So we're going to be skipping 2 stitches and granny stitching. So I'm going to keep going and I'll meet you at a corner. So I am coming up to my next corner. I've got 1, 2, 3 before the corner stitch. So I'm going to go into that third and do a granny cluster. Now into that corner space, we are going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. And now we're going to go back to counting our stitches. So 1, 2, granny cluster into the next. And we are going to just continue this pattern of granny clustering into every third stitch and doing 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochets in our corner spaces. So I'm going to keep going and I'll meet you back over here. So now I am going to do 2 double crochets right into that same corner stitch, chain 2, and then we are going to slip stitch into the top of that initial chain 3 to end this round. Then we will tie off and join with our new color. So we are changing color again. So I have my slip knot of my new color. We're going to join into a corner space. So put that slip knot on your hook, pull it up, and then you are going to chain 3 for our first double crochet, yarn over and do a second double crochet. Now we will yarn over and make a granny stitch in that next space. So this is just going to be another row of granny stitches. You are going to do 3 double crochets in every space, and then in every corner you're going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, then 2 double crochets. So keep going with your granny stitches and I will meet you back at the end. Now I am at that last corner, so I'm going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, and slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 and tie off. Alright, so this is going to be our last row, our last color change. I am going to make a slip knot. We are going to repeat this solid row of double crochets. So we are going to do the exact same thing this row that we did for that one. So to get us started, we're putting the slip knot on the hook, pulling up and chaining 3. From here on out, we are just doing a double crochet in all of the stitches, and then in the corner spaces, we are doing double crochet, chain 2, double crochet. So exactly like we did this row. So I am going to go ahead and finish that row, and then I will meet you back here when I am done. So I am done with this row. So I am going to finish off that corner we started in. So 1 double crochet, chain 2, and now we are going to slip stitch in the top of that first chain 3. And tie off. So that is the last row of our square. So now that we have finished that, you need 2 more of these. So you need a total of 3 of these squares. I'm actually going to block my squares because I am going to line the back of them with fabric. So once you have 3 squares, you can either jump straight to joining them and continuing your bag, or you can add a fabric lining to the back of them so that the inside of your bag is lined like this. This is 100% optional. You absolutely do not have to add lining if you don't want to. I have made plenty of this style of bag without lining and I've never had issues. So if you're not comfortable with lining yet, or if you just don't feel like putting lining in this bag, totally fine. Just skip the next couple minutes where I'm showing how to do the lining. You can skip directly to where we will start joining these squares. Other than the part where we are putting the lining in, nothing at all changes about this pattern if you do or don't want to put lining. So stick around for the lining or just skip. I'll have timestamps in the description. So because this is a true scrap project, I am using fabric scrap. I don't have enough of the same fabric to make all of the squares the same, so some of my squares will have this lining, and then I used a different fabric for the lining of this one. So whatever you've got laying around, I suggest using for this project. So to get started, I am going to lay my fabric out on my cutting mat. Now I am going to put my square down, and I'm just going to leave a little tiny bit of fabric on all of the sides. So because I am going to be folding over my fabric and sewing along the white instead of sewing along the edge, I can leave a little bit less on the outside for seam allowance, but I still like to leave just a little bit. So I'm going to take my rotary cutter and I'm just going to cut along the outside of the bag, only leaving a little bit around the edges. Go ahead and cut around. So as you can see, I cut out my fabric and left a little bit around the edges for seam allowance. So now we are going to go ahead and pin the fabric to the square. So our next step is going to be pinning down the fabric. So I have some straight pins that I am going to be using. So before I start pinning, I'm actually going to take my fabric and I'm going to cut diagonally on the corner so that when we go to fold it on the corners, it folds a little bit easier. So you don't have to cut much. Even that may be slightly too much, just a little bit on each corner to help it not bunch up too much when we have to fold it. So now we can start pinning. So I've got the back side or the wrong side of my square facing me. That's where we're going to be sewing our lining. And then we've got the right side of the lining facing us because we want the pretty side to be showing when we open up our bag. So that is how we need to have it laying, and try and kind of get it centered on your square. Now to get started, you are just going to take your fabric and fold it under like that. And you want to fold it under so it's running diagonally with the bottom of your last row. So I am going to cover up the white part and want this brown showing. So just to take a closer look, that is where I'm folding my fabric to. Because when we sew it on, we want to be sewing along the very bottom edge of this last row. So I've got that folded to about where I want it. So now I'm just going to take a couple of pins and I'm just going to pin it in place. Don't need to use a ton, just enough to keep it where you want it. So I just did 4 along the side. And again, it is really important to make sure that we are not putting fabric over the top of this last row, because we are going to be using these stitches at the top of this last row to join to our other squares. So now I'm going to fold this side under the same way that we did with the last one. I'm going to fold it until it's kind of following the line of the bottom of that final row. And now that I've got it pretty lined up, I am going to go ahead and pin it. So now I'm going to keep going, rotating my sides, folding it over, and I'm just going to keep pinning until I have my fabric pinned down all the way. So I am going to take a hand sewing needle and this thread that I matched to the outside color of our bag. So I am going to unravel quite a long strand, stick that thread on our needle, and I am going to pull a pretty long tail. The more thread you have through your eye of your needle, the less likely it is that it's going to get pulled off of the needle. So I like to start fairly close to a corner, but not quite on a corner. So to get started, I'm going to do what I've heard called an anchor stitch. We are going to take up a little, very, very tiny little piece of fabric. Doesn't really matter where, just take up a little tiny bit. That's plenty. So I am going to pull my thread through until I have a little tail. So now I'm going to go right back through that little piece of fabric we went through the first time. And right now we are only going through the fabric, we're not going through the crochet. So I'm going to go right back through the little piece that we already went through. And I'm going to pull my thread through until we've got a little loop. Now we are going to use our needle and go through that loop to make a little knot. So we've got a little knot going, and I am going to make one more knot just to make sure it's super secure. So I'm going to go back through that little piece of fabric, pull my thread until I've got a little loop going, and go through that loop to make a knot. Once we're knotted on, we should be nice and secure. So I'm going to stick my needle down into the fabric, and I am going to grab the post of the double crochet behind it. So I'm going to go behind this little V here, these two little lines here. Go through. I'm through that double crochet, and now I'm going to go back up through the fabric and pull. And you don't have to pull this super tight or anything. You don't want it to warp. And then I always skip one and then go into the fabric closer to the next double crochet. So I go in, go through that double crochet, and then go back up through the fabric. So this is how I like to sew my fabric to my crochet, and that is how we'll continue for the rest of the square until we are fully attached. But I'll show you a couple more times. So we just went with our thread behind this double crochet, so I'm going to skip one and go in closer to the next one. So go in, make sure I'm going through the back of that double crochet, and then go back up through the fabric. So I am going to keep going and sewing my fabric to my square, and then I will meet you back when I'm finished. So I went all the way around and stitched my fabric onto my square, and I got back to where we started. So to tie off, we are going to do exactly what we did to tie on. So we are going to do another anchor stitch. So I am going to do what we did before, grab a little piece of fabric, go through it again, keep pulling until you've got a loop, and then go through the loop. And then I'm going to go through the loop one more time. So keep going, pull through the loop, and now you are all finished. So now we have our fabric backing or our lining fully attached to our square. Alright, so I have all 3 squares finished and lined. So now we're going to go ahead and attach them. So to do that, I am going to choose the square that I want to be the middle part of my bag, so that this is going to be the bottom, and then lay my other squares next to it. So this is how we are going to lay our squares. So we're going to be joining the seams here and here first. So I'm going to zoom back in to show you how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to start down here, go up this way, and then go down this way, just so you have an overview of what it should look like. So I've got the first two squares that I'm going to be joining just lying side by side next to each other. So I'm going to use a flat slip stitch to join my squares. If you like to sew your squares together or use a mattress or a whip stitch or single crochet, you absolutely can. If there is any other way that you like to join your crochet squares, you can do that, but I will show you how I join them with a flat slip stitch. So I am going to use the same color to join as I used for my last row. So I am going to make a slip knot, and I'm going to put that on my hook, still using the same hook that I used for the rest of the project. So we're going to start down here on the right side, on the right square, and we are going to start in the corner. So we can see our chain 2 in the corner. So 1, 2. We are going to go into the back stitch of this first chain in the chain 2. So it's chain 1, 2, go into the back stitch, which is the back loop is this loop. So go into the back loop of that stitch. Then we're going to take our yarn and move it to the middle between the two squares. Then I'm going to look at the square on the left side, and I'm going to find that first stitch in the chain 2 in the corner, and I'm going to go into the back loop of that stitch. So now we've got 3 loops on our hook. Pull your working yarn through all 3. So now we are attached. So we're going to find that next stitch right there, go through the back loop. Make sure you're keeping your yarn in the middle between the squares the whole time. Find the next stitch on the left side, go into the back loop. Now you've got 3 loops on your hook, pull through all 3. Find the next stitch, go into the back loop. On the other side, find the next stitch and go into the back loop, and then pull your working yarn through all of the loops on your hook. So this is how we're going to join our squares. I'm just going to keep going all the way up these squares, and I'm going to stop when I get to the corner, and then I'll meet you back there. So I am at the end. I went up my 2 squares. So now what I have left here is the chain 2 on either side. So I am going to keep going and going into the back loop of the stitch on the right, and then the back loop of the stitch on the left for the chain 2. So now we are fully joined, and this is where we are going to bring in our other square, and we're going to put it to the left. So this one will be on our left, but to make it easier for us to flat slip stitch, I am just going to rotate the squares so that our working yarn is in the middle, and we're going to be working back down this way. So we're going to go into this first chain of the chain 2, we're going to go into the back loop. So because we are in the back loop already of the stitch on the left, we're just going to pull through these 2 to attach these 2 squares. So now we're going to go into the next stitch on the right, go into that next stitch on the left, and pull through all 3 loops. And then we will continue this way and flat slip stitch all the way down the remainder of these 2 squares. So I'm going to keep going, and I'll meet you back when I get to the end. So I finished joining these 2 squares. So the way that we're going to fold our bag is folding over the middle and then folding both sides in like this. And now I left off right here, so we're going to just flip it up like this, and we're going to keep going with flat slip stitching the stitches together. So we're going to just pick up right where we left off And we're just gonna keep flat slip stitching all the way back up this seam here. So I'm gonna keep going, and then I will meet you back when I get up to this corner. So I just finished joining, and now I'm at this top. So now we're going to turn our bag. So we're gonna work down this way now to join these squares. So just like we've done with our other squares, we're going to go into that first stitch of the chain 2 in the back loop, then over here into that back loop and pull through. And then from here on out, it is exactly the same. We're just flat slip stitching right back down until we get to the end down here, and we'll close it up. So I'm going to keep going, and then I'll meet you back down here. So I just got to the very end, and I did my last flat slip stitch right here. I am going to just slip stitch into this bottom stitch that's kind of here on the corner. You don't have to do this, but I feel like it just kind of helps tie it together a little bit more. So I'm just going to do a regular old slip stitch. And now we are finished. So we're going to go ahead and tie off. I'm just going to use my hook to pull the tails through to the back. But we are finished with the body of our bag. So this is how mine looks. So at this point, our bag should be fully sewn together. All 3 of our squares should be attached. So now we can go ahead and start working on the straps. I am going to be using hardware to attach my straps onto my bag. I'll show you how I do that, but if you don't want to use the hardware or you don't have any, that's totally fine. You can follow the instructions to make the strap and then just sew the strap onto your bag rather than using Lobster Clasps. So because I want this bag to be super textured and funky, I'm going to be using a different stitch to create the strap. I'm going to be using a Tunisian crochet knit stitch. Even if you've never Tunisian crocheted before, I would suggest just trying it if you like the look of it. It is pretty simple once you get the hang of it. I'll show you how to do it. If you don't want to do the knit stitch, you can just do single crochet instead, following all of the same stitch counts. So to get started, I'm just going to make a slip knot, put that on my hook. I'm going to chain 5. Turn your work over, and you are going to see these little bumps on the back of your chain. Go into that first bump, pull up a loop, go into the next bump, pull up a loop, and keep it on your hook. Go into the next bump, pull up a loop, and then next bump, and pull up a loop. So you should have 5 loops on your hook at this point. So you're going to pull through 1 loop, then pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through 2, and then pull through 2. So you just did your first pass of the Tunisian crochet knit stitch. So now you'll see that we have these bars. If you look at each one, there's going to be 2 bars. So this almost V shape for each. So you're going to go through these 2 bars, pull up a loop, and just keep that on your hook. So again, go between the 2 bars, pull up a loop, and keep it on your hook. Go through 2 bars, pull up a loop, and now the very last stitch that we have here at the end, we're going to go behind these last 2 bars. So I'll show you one more time. Here's our last one. If you look at the end, you'll see the 2 bars here. You're going to go behind both of them and pull up a loop. So you should still have 5 loops on your hook. Now the same way we did in the last row, pull through 1, then pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through 2, and pull through 2. So that is your knit stitch. That is how you're going to continue with the strap. So just one more time really quickly. Here's our first set of bars. Go through the middle between them, pull up a loop. So you're going to keep going doing this, going behind the 2 bars at the end of the row. When you go to pass back this way, you'll always go through 1 before just going through 2 all the way down. So you're just going to keep going with this until your strap is the length that you would like it to be. In the next clip, I'll tell you how long I ended up making my strap, but I'm going to keep going until I like the length, and then I will meet you back here. Alright, so I did 60 rows of my Tunisian knit stitch, and this is how my strap looks. It is about 14 inches long. Because I am adding hardware, I know that that's going to add some length on either side of my strap as far as how it's going to sit on my shoulder. So I'm going to stop at 14 inches, but if you want your strap to be longer, just keep adding rows until you like the length of the strap. So now I'm just going to tie off on my strap. And we are going to just put this to the side for now. So what we're going to do now is crochet a border along the outside of our bag. This just kind of helps make everything look all nicely connected and meshed together. So I am going to make a slip knot, and I am going to join kind of over off to the right of the middle here. So put that slip knot on your hook, pull up, chain 1, and then put a single crochet in that stitch. And from here on out, we are going to single crochet into every stitch all the way around the edge of our bag. So when I come to these kind of corners where we joined our squares, you can see a stitch here and a stitch here on either side of this point. I like to decrease here, so I am going to go into the first stitch, pull up a loop, go into the stitch on the other side, pull up a loop, and then pull through all 3 loops on your hook. But from here on out, it is all just regular single crochets in every single stitch. So when you get to the corners, you don't need to go into the chain 2 stitches. You can just go straight into that space and do 2 single crochets rather than trying to go through those chain stitches. And then all the way back down the other side of the bag, doing single crochets. So I'm going to keep going, and then I will meet you on the other side when I finish single crocheting. So I just got back down to where we started, so I'm going to slip stitch right into that first single crochet that we made and tie off, leaving a long tail to weave in at the end. So now we're going to make the ties for the middle. So that middle stitch here at the very bottom of this V, we're just going to stick our hook right through that, make a slip knot, stick that on our hook, pull it up. Now I am going to chain 50. So now that I'm at 50, I am going to go into that next stitch and slip stitch. So I'm going to go right into the stitch, pull my working yarn through both loops. So into the stitch, pull my working yarn through both loops to slip stitch. So I am going to slip stitch all the way back down the chain that we just made. So when I get back to the end, I will meet you back here. Alright, so I am coming up on the last stitch. So now I am going to slip stitch right back into the stitch that we started in to attach our chain back to the rest of our bag. Now I am going to tie off. And again, I'm leaving a tail so that I have some ends to weave in at the end. So this is how mine looks. I've got my chain. So now we're going to just repeat that process on the other side over here. So I'm going to go over there and make another chain, and then I'll meet you back here. So I finished the tie on both sides. So now the last thing that we have to do, other than weaving in our ends, is attaching our strap. So I am going to use the same thread and needle that I used to sew on the lining. If you didn't do lining, you could just use the yarn that you used for the strap and the border to sew it on. So if you're not using hardware, you can just sew the edge of your strap directly to your bag. I am using hardware, so I am going to slip my strap through, and I don't want to leave a ton of room or have a super big loop. So I'm just gonna fold it over like this, and I'm gonna sew across here. So I am gonna just insert here at the very, very end, and I am going to tie a knot to attach myself to the yarn. So I'm just gonna go back and forth sewing my strap onto my hardware. So I'm gonna do that on both sides, and then I'll meet you back here. I finished attaching my strap to my hardware, and then I just went ahead and clipped my hardware directly onto my bag in the corner space of those granny squares on the side. Now the last thing that we have to do is weave in our ends. So to weave in our ends, I am just going to use one of these darning needles. You can use any type of a darning or a finishing needle. So I'm just going to show you super quick how I weave in my ends. So you will put your tail into the needle. I always like to bring the yarn to the back of the piece or inside of the piece if possible. And the key to weaving in ends in the most secure way is to go in multiple directions. So I am going to go downward, and now I am going to go to the left, just weaving it through a couple of those double crochets. And now that I have woven it in a few different directions, I am going to go ahead and just cut. And now our end is totally woven in. So you will do that for all of these loose little ends around the bag, and then you are finished. Thank you for watching.